Sparks. This is a superhero movie with a difference. So this is quite a low budget independent film, and it's kind of a different sort of take on the sort of superhero films that I think we've seen before. Now, one of the first point difference of this movie, it actually takes place in 1940s America, which is kind of a different setting to the majority of superhero films that we've seen before. Yes, I know we've had Captain America, but this is a very sort of a different sort of style of film to that one. Now, this is a kind of complex plot, I have to say, so I can't give too much away. But to give you a very kind of a brief sort of plot synopsis, we're kind of told in a prologue that there's kind of a meteor has hit this, in America, and it's killed a bunch of people. However, a small amount of survivors have gained sort of superpowers. Then we sort of cut to a little bit further in time, and we're basically told that vigilantes are kind of a relatively sort of common occurrence within this kind of universe. And our main character, Ian Sparks, he witnesses his parents get tragically killed when he's a young boy, and kind of goes on a kind of mission to rid the world of crime and becomes a kind of vigilante himself. Now, the majority of this film is actually told in flashback as we find out that Ian Sparks has actually been accused of murder, and he's trying to clear his name basically by telling this kind of reporter about the events that have led up to this particular occurrence. So the majority of the narrative is told in portions of flashbacks. Now, I can't really say too much more about the plot than that, otherwise I'm going to give away a lot of the spoilers. And this is a very complex plot. It's very kind of a noir type film. So if you're a fan of the kind of the old Humphrey Bogart type movies, it is really sort of harkening back to that kind of feel. And it actually looks a lot like Sin City. Now, part of that I think is due to the budget, which is kind of one of the issues I maybe have with this film. It's a very smart film. It's obviously one that hasn't been kind of just thrown together, and a lot of thought has gone in behind it. But I think its ambition is maybe outstripped by the lack of budget, because it kind of looks a little bit cheap in places in regards to the effects. But the plot is so kind of original and very kind of intelligent that you kind of almost don't mind so much. There's so many sort of twists and turns, red herrings, and the plot is a very complex, maybe even a little bit convoluted if I'm completely honest, but at the end of the movie I think the majority of people will be able to understand what's happened. But it's one of these films you do have to sort of pay attention to what's going on, because there's quite a lot of information that we're kind of told. As I say, I have a couple of minor problems with it. I mean, as the effects, as I've mentioned, particularly things like the explosions and kind of, they look very sort of computer generated and a little bit cheap. And there's not a lot of action in it, but sometimes when we do see a couple of fight scenes, they kind of are a little bit poorly staged. Now, of course, you could sort of say this is a stylized movie and you can kind of sweep those issues under the rug, but I think it wasn't a conscious decision to do that. It was kind of just the way that the film's turned out, and that's again down to probably the budget of anything. But I will remind you, this is obviously a relatively low budget independent flick, so I do have to give it some leeway. As I say, the plot of this one is probably unlike the majority of superhero films. I guess the only one I can really sort of compare it to as the kind of feel is maybe Watchmen. And if you're kind of a fan of maybe the graphic novel and things like the cut of Frank Miller's work, you're kind of going to get a kick out of this film. Apparently it is actually based on a graphic novel, but I have to be honest, it's not one that I've actually read. But it's obviously a very smart graphic novel if it is. And this film is very smart, and it's filled with kind of interesting characters and a lot going on. It's obviously a cerebral superhero movie. It's not going to be for everyone. I guess the problem maybe this one will have is it kind of looks very colourful on the front. I suppose when Watchmen came out, they maybe had that sort of similar problem. Parents just assumed it was going to be a kind of family-friendly superhero movie, and it really isn't. I mean, it's not a particularly violent or gory film, but it's certainly, there's a lot of adult content in this movie. Overall, though, it is an enjoyable film. If you watch the whole film, I think you'll get a good understanding of what's actually going on, but you have to pay attention. So I'm going to give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I did enjoy it. What did you think of it if you've seen it? Leave me a comment. I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.